The United Nations has reiterated its support for the NSA's protesters' agitation for social justice and good governance, describing the peaceful campaign which later snowballed into violence when hoodlums hijacked it to loot and touch public and private assets, including police stations, as legitimate. However, against the backdrop of the violent disruption of the NSA's peaceful protest, President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday told youths who championed the NSA's demonstration that it is in their interest to keep the peace, answering questions from State House reporters after leading a UN delegation to meeting with President Buhari. Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations and former Minister of Environment, Mrs. Amina Mohammed, stated that the entire organization were alarmed by the weight of the protest and consequent level of destruction. She said that such agitations must be, however, be pursued peacefully. Sundu.
Well, she made a point that COVID-19 has caused various protests. There's been sort of an eruption of some sort of mood of uprising as a result of the virus for obvious reasons, the economic restraints, just the physical frustration of being under lockdown. I guess it made people sort of more short-tempered. So she made that point that it's not exclusive to Nigeria, but she praised the Nigerian government in being more responsive than other governments, because you'll recall the Nigerian government was very quick, some might say too quick, to announce that SARS would be disbanded and be replaced by SWAT. And that's factual. But on one hand. On the other hand, yes, we can say the government was responsive. That was a prompt response. But was it actually just a superficial response? We've seen the president's chief of staff, Mr. Gambari, going around talking to various stakeholders, traditional rulers, with an effort to bridge a gap with the disgruntled youth and the federal government, all of which is great. But on the other hand, we have disturbing incidents like the freezing of the accounts of #NSAS protest campaigners. We have the lady whose passport was seized at the airport. So I'm not sure if I'm going to really give full credit to the government for being responsive, because that's the same word, superficial. But beneath it, there's a really dark undertone of some kind of attempt to repress the voice of the protesters and their right to peaceful protest.
Dr. Abati?
I think the visit of the UN delegation, led by Nigeria's Amina Mohammed, was a very good diplomatic move. Amina Mohammed was very diplomatic on all the fronts. On the side of government, she was talking about the United Nations commitment to partner with the Nigerian government and stressed the point about the need to listen to the youths, and also the fact that the Nigerian government responded quickly to the demands of the youth. And she talked about the importance of youths in development. And of course, again, partnership with the Nigerian government. So all of that on the government side. On the part of the youths, she said, well, they have the right to express themselves, to make legitimate demands, to contribute to the process of moving society forward. But at the same time, they will need to do it in a peaceful manner. Now, all that is very diplomatic talk. Of course, we don't expect that the UN delegation will come and start criticizing the president of Nigeria. But there was a subtext to it, which I think we can isolate. Nobody talked about that. But the fact that the international community is monitoring what is going on in Nigeria. The timing of that visit from the UN delegation is coming at a time when, as Tundun pointed out, the passports of persons who took part in that protest was being seized. The lady you referred to, her name is Modupe Udele, although we're told that immigration has now returned her passport, yes, and she herself has confirmed it. We had a case of the authorities freezing the account of 18 persons plus one organization who were alleged to have been using their accounts to funnel money to promote the protest. And in the light of those persons, certain persons saying that there will be another round of NSAS protests, government has tried to clamp down on the accounts of such persons. We also have reports that immigration has been told not to allow people who took part to travel because investigations have been carried out with regard to their level and scope of involvement. Now, by yesterday evening, it was reported that one lady, DJ Switch, who was the one sending video reports, live video reports, as she alleged, as she insisted, from the scene. And now we're told that the lady, Obianoju Ude, I think that's her name, popularly known as DJ Switch, she has found her way out of Nigeria, and she's right now in Canada. So we find reports of persons who took part in this legitimate protest, to borrow a word from the UN envoy, started running away from the country. So the United Nations coming around with a delegation to say that, look, young people have a right to protest, may be a very subtle way of saying, look, you must listen to your young people, but the young people themselves must protest in a peaceful manner. And that's why I think that visit at this time makes sense. Although Amina Mohammed also alluded to an economic sustainability program called UN Plus Offer, over which Nigeria will partner with the UN. Then, of course, we should also underline the statement that was attributed to President Muhammadu Buhari. President Muhammadu Buhari at that meeting spoke about a number of issues: climate change, the situation with the Lake Chad, and the need to do something. The need to do something about Lake Chad. He also talked about COVID-19 and how that has affected the global economy. Well, that's a no-brainer. We all know that. He talked about the infrastructure challenges that Nigeria inherited, that his administration inherited, and the efforts that his administration is making to address what he calls infrastructure deficit. But the key point that he now drew attention to is that the young people of Nigeria themselves have a responsibility to be peaceful in whatever they do. And that, I think, is a loaded statement, because he said, look, our own generation is on the last lap. We are exiting. You want infrastructure. You want jobs. You want a different national security framework in the country. But you yourself must play your role. So that's a way of throwing back the challenge to the young people of Nigeria. But I think what should be the big takeaway is the fact that national security challenges were pointed out. The need for reform was reiterated, and the president did not at any point say that he would not engage with young people. But he made it clear that young people also have a responsibility to be peaceful, because it's their future that is at stake.
Right, value statement made on both sides. That's all on news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus Odiri, Michael Wilson, and Aaron Akirja. Let's give us updates on Africa, global business, and COVID-19. Stay with us. Right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. The Dependable Rotus Odiri is here to give us Africa business update. Good morning, Rotus. Over to you.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Tundu, and good morning, Doctor. We kick off with the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Yesterday, goodness me, the Nigerian Stock Exchange spiked by 3.96%. Look at that. 7,210 deals, 636 million in volume of stocks traded, valued at 8.2 billion naira. Look at the market cap. We're approaching 17 trillion. This is a market cap that was at 13 trillion only a few months ago. Now, stock markets around the world were on fire yesterday. Michael Wilson will take you through the global markets. But here, I mean, it's a mix of a number of things. One, you can say maybe it's the Pfizer announcement with respect to possibly having a vaccine with a 90% efficacy result. You could also say maybe it's a Biden rally, but those are foreign investors. The Nigerian Stock Exchange is still, for now, in these last few months, primarily driven by the domestic investors. I mean, look at that. The market is up 20% yet today. The market was down in negative regions about 8% just 3-4 months ago. Also, there's the fact that, as I've talked about several times on the show, fixed income, money market yields, fixed income yields, those are down. T-bills now, the 90-day T-bill is doing less than 1%. I mean, those money market yields are so low that pension fund administrators and so on are pushing funds towards the equities market. Also, I believe there was a maturity in the fixed income space, which possibly with all that liquidity is flowing into the stock market. So Dangote Cement recorded the biggest gain yesterday. MTN, Lafarge, I mean, the blue chip stocks on the market were were pretty much high performers yesterday. We move on to Dangote now. Speaking of Dangote Cement, which was again one of the biggest gainers on the stock exchange. I think Dangote was up by 6-7% yesterday. He's been granted exemption from the federal government to move goods across our land borders. He only did, as far as trading is concerned and moving across, this is to Niger and Togo. Again, there's two ways to look at this. You remember that the Vice President Osibanjo, when he had the 60th anniversary discussion with a magazine, he was asked about the land borders, and he said that, well, Nigeria is gradually moving towards reopening the borders so we can continue trade with our neighbors. So, on the one hand, you can look at this move with Dangote Cement being granted this exemption and say that that is perhaps a pathway towards that. On the other hand, there are murmurs of favoritism that are here. I mean, there's a number of economists that have said, hey, look, allowing legitimate exporters and importers to move their goods across the border should be a no-brainer. Why refuse everybody else and allow only one company? This is why some of us argue that the Nigerian economy is rigged in favor of a handful of well-connected persons. Other comments, instead of doing the right thing for everybody's benefit, government would rather do the right thing only for the well-connected. So, you know, there's that argument to be made. And, you know, why just one company when it could be everybody else? Trade and, you know, movement in trade across the borders there's an entire market, right, that is hurting because of what happened last in August of 2019. So again, we hope that the federal government, you know, reopens the borders gradually and allows other companies to be able to get their goods across. Finally, there was a gender discrimination accusation leveled at a restaurant in GRA. A journalist and producer that works for CNN Africa, Nana Aisha Saludin, says here, I got kicked out of her Square restaurant in GRA because, according to them, they have a new policy, no women allowed. This is a restaurant I've visited multiple times in the past few years. And when you think about how hospitality has suffered due to COVID-19, you would think they would be allowing everyone in here to be able to get access to drink and food. So when I pressed about why I was being hushed out, I was told that to eat there I had to be chaperoned by a man. I was too stunned to comment, I can't have a meal because I'm a woman. Then she tagged her friend who she was there to eat with. Now, she did reach out to the Consumer Competition Protection Commission, the FCCPC. They told her to download the complaints and also to reach out to them by DM, and she did. And they put out a press release, and in their press release they said that they've the company didn't do proper sensitization of its staff, from the security to other staff. They said they sent an undercover female worker there who was allowed in. So they said they're going to continue to monitor that particular restaurant and basically make sure that they don't discriminate against anyone. Now, there was another bit that came out saying that the restaurant was arguing that people who visit the restaurant, particularly ladies, will only go there and order one drink and just sit there for hours. And that is the opportunity cost of possibly other patrons who could come to the restaurant and order more food and drink. So they are limiting that. Restaurants have to look at ways into either using a threshold to enter, entry point, or a minimum amount to order drink and food when you arrive, in order to try to mitigate these things, because it's not a good look for the company at all. And that's our update.
I think that's completely disgraceful. I want to start with this difficult business of being a woman and that really lame excuse that was given of women sit in the restaurants and have nurse one drink for hours on end. If that's the case, if you're having drinks and not food, you should sit at the bar. They should have some kind of seating for those people. I think what it is with women in, well, Nigeria, all over the world, you're constantly running this gauntlet of daily microaggressions. In the workplace, if you're lucky enough to avoid sexual harassment, you get all kinds of mansplaining, he-peating, which is the practice of a woman saying something, everybody ignores it, a man says it, and it's when you all hear it. You get all kinds of microaggressions every single day. And then in your recreation, you want to have a meal, you want to have a drink, you get this. And there's another subtext there. A lot of establishments assume that women are prostitutes, that they're going to come in and start to solicit and proposition male clients. If you go out with a man, when it's time to pay the bill is handed to him automatically, like you are incapable of paying your way. It's so insulting. If you go out with another woman and you're not harassed in the manner that this lady was, there's also this assumption of you're not a high-ticket spender. So a waiter might take half an hour to even attend to you. It's constant in Nigeria with women, and I'm really glad this lady flagged it. It's completely unacceptable. As for the point that you made about the border closure, it's really charitable of you to present the possibility that this could be the first step in a gradual reopening. Very nice of you to give the benefit of the doubt. I don't buy it. I think it's favoritism. Any kind of exceptions in this manner really do make people uncomfortable. Why should the Dangote company be singled out? It's wrong.
Well, first, let me comment on what the FCCPC has done with regard to Azoka restaurant in Ikeja GRA. Now, I think we should commend the leadership of the FCCPC. Since Babatunde Urukera took over that agency, we have seen that commission responding quickly, proactively to complaints, which was not the case in the past when we used to raise questions about whether or not the average Nigerian consumer is entitled to protection or not. Now, you recall that in March, there was another restaurant at Aboyade Cole in Victoria Island, a Chinese restaurant that was accused of not attending to Nigerian patrons. Nigerian patrons were only allowed to take food out of the restaurant. And the FCCPC moved in immediately and shut down that particular restaurant. Now, that was a case of discrimination. But in this latest case, it's one of gender discrimination. And while I say the FCCPC should be commended, is that they took the effort to immediately investigate a day after the lady complained. And they came up with the point that this was not really a case of gender discrimination. It was just, security details at the restaurant misbehaving. And of course, some of these security people that are put at the gate, they can have their own funny ideas that may not be directives from management. And I guess it's on the basis of having been convinced of the explanation that the FCCPC has now served that restaurant with what is called a complaint notice, and that they will be monitoring. And we just hope that the explanation they are given is the truth, because gender discrimination is not acceptable. It's not allowed, even under the law. And the lady has done very well by immediately filing a complaint. Some people will just have taken it in their stride. As for the opening of the border, yes, what we're dealing with may well indeed be truly crony capitalism, elite alliances to the disadvantage of others. But what should be pushing for is that whether it's regard to the opening of the border or restrictions or movement, industrial policy, trade policy should not be driven by favoritism or cronism. There should be a level playing field. Will other cement companies be allowed, for example, to enjoy the same privilege?
No.
That's
great. Roses, would like to say a big thank you. But I just want to ask a question. Why is it so difficult to be a woman in this country? Just why? Why? I hope that's a food for thought for a lot of people across the board. Moving on to more business update. Michael Wilson joins us now from London.
Yeah, morning. You've commented on the sort of dancing that the financial markets did, and that was really echoed throughout the world. I'm going to pour a lot of cold water on this. I hope you don't mind, but I'm not joining in the general queue of the Pfizer and BioNTech announcements about the preliminary results of their COVID-19 vaccine with 90% effectiveness. A long, long way to go before all that happens. The results need to be peer-reviewed. They need to be validated before they can get fast-track approval from the United States FDA, for one, and there are plenty of other companies on this as well. So rather weirdly, I was watching a market guru yesterday who said that he was commenting on the fact that shares in airlines and casino stocks in Asia Pacific actually surged, and stocks related to stay-at-home tech stocks, as it were, like Zoom and so on, declined. And I heard this market guru, saying that there was an incredible rotation, as he put it, from defensive and stay-at-home shares towards cyclicals. Well, I don't think I would use the word incredible in a very different way. I simply don't believe it. I'll explain why. We're going to see. I believe it happened. I don't believe it should have happened. We're likely to see a lot more announcements from other vaccine candidates in the coming months, and this is not going to magically turn the clock back to 2019. The logistical challenges of production and not to mention delivery are absolutely immense. I mean, how many shots, for example, will we each need to have? Will we be compelled to take the shots? And will there be a lot of non-vaxxers who in our country represent about 10% of those who've expressed a preference for this actually about to do it? I don't think they are. Pfizer and BioNTech have actually, what they've really done is given governments around the world a social distancing headache. That's what it is. It sounds like very good news. However, as I was saying, the financial markets didn't worry about that. They piled into bombed out sectors like aviation, travel, leisure, big oil, and yes, banks. And they went back to 2019. Technology, home working, fitness, online shopping, and associated logistic companies all retreated. So what is the reality behind all this? Number one, why stay out of a market when everybody else is jumping in? Monetary policy is loose and will remain loose for a long time. Equities will continue to fly on the basis of this kind of good news all the time. No question about that. Are we actually going to be flying away for long weekends? Do you magically get an airliner out of storage and staff it and get it into flying condition straight away? No, you do not. That's the reality of what's going on. So let's look at the United States. I'll give you a quick recap of what happened there. Initial fast money rush, obviously, but it actually came back with some profit taking. Hard to see, I have to say, that big tech will be taking a beating too long. We were talking yesterday and I posed the question, what will Joe Biden actually do about big tech? Will he break it up? Anyway, they've been busy printing mountains of cash. They've all got very strong competitive positions, unlike airlines, for example. So I would say that they will remain. People will buy these on the dip. I don't think there'll be a rampant bull market today, either in Europe or in the United States. The buy everything trade is published by free central bank money, and it may be slightly less tech-centric going forward, but I doubt it very much indeed. Here in the UK, then, the House of Lords gave the House of Commons, the main debating chamber of our government, that gave them a resounding defeat to remove clauses in the internet and voted to remove clauses in the Internal Market Bill. It's all very, very complicated, but it's to do with the Northern Ireland thing, the various segments that the government have said if they don't like what they're hearing, then they're going to take exception to them. And we shouldn't forget that President Biden, or President-elect Biden, who's alluded a lot to his Irish ancestry, that says anything that gets in the way for Northern Ireland and its position within, straddling as it does the EU and the UK, then he will vote against that, and that will hold up any kind of unilateral trade deal that we have with the United States. So yesterday, of course, the UK stock market sprinted out of the stocks, but comes down to earth now. We're going to be talking about Brexit. We're going to be talking about unemployment. The latest figures show a rise in this country of 4.8%. And we saw the beginnings of unemployment beginning to accelerate in the last quarter's figures and last month's figures. The furlough scheme's back, but we have a lockdown, of course. And that is a word which will come to haunt us, obviously, as we go into 2021. So there we are, 4.8%. And finally, just briefly, commodities, oil, OPEC Plus dodged a bit of a bullet yesterday. Oil up 6%. I don't believe that either. I don't think that airlines are actually going to soak up that demand very rapidly as jets start to go. There's plenty of oil around. Don't get fooled by these figures.
I think it's just a bullish move from the vaccine news yesterday. And when I saw the proper report, I'm still a little bit skeptical about things like sample size and proper peer review on that. So I wouldn't get excited until it is done. But Monsieur Barnier was in London yesterday coming to talk. Could the British win this like they did with the Battle of Agincourt or something? Are they going to get a Brexit deal anytime soon? What did Monsieur Barnier come to do in London yesterday?
Well, what he's coming to do is so that he regards himself as a head of state, given his standing within the European Union, and it's down to the big boys and girls now to sit down around a table and bash something out. Make no mistake about it, it is a complicated process, no question about that. It has been made very difficult for the UK because none of the EU want to see one of its previous members leaving very easily, because trust me, if the UK could leave easily, then lots of other countries would. A lot of countries are getting fed up with the fact that they are linked to unelected so-called politicians. I prefer to call them technocrats, but you can take your choice if you like to call them politicians, should you wish, deciding about how they're going to run their economies. The fact of the matter is, I keep going back to this, there was no United States of America until there was political union between those states. There is no political union between the divided states of the European Union. It is still run from Germany and it's still run from France, and the smaller nations either suck it up to get hold of the euro or they don't. So Barnier has in his mind, whatever he says, he comes over here because they do need to do some kind of deal. It won't be a great one for us, but we'll have to go out into the world on our own and go our own way. We've been very good at that in the past. I see that there will be enormous problems. There'll be many tears before bedtime, but we will do it.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Mike. I really appreciate you. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Aaron Akerijola, are you going to tell me this is the best news you've heard in about 6 months you've been doing this show now?
Rufai, you might be showing a little bit of skepticism towards it, but it is good news and everyone seems to be celebrating. But by the way, first of all, good morning to you, Tundu. It's always a pleasure to see you. It's good to be here again. Good morning to you, Doctor. And
back here on the veron.
All right, let's just start it off with that particular news and try to dissect it as we actually go on. And that is the fact that, of course, history was actually literally being made yesterday as BioNTech, talking about the German pharmaceutical, who are partnering with Pfizer, came up with the news that at the moment that their vaccine is more than 90% effective, which is huge, understanding that at best, experts were saying maybe 50% will actually see a vaccine scale through. But this is showing 90%, and this is very, very positive. But before we get into that, a quick look at the outlook globally in terms of COVID-19. And when we actually look at it, we look at the figures, of course, well over 50,913,451, with total deaths about 1,263,089. If they help us with my slide to help us dissect the world figures as we actually look at it closely, you'll find out that there's still been a massive rise, and more than ever before, even though things might not be entering the second wave in Africa. Certainly, when you look at what is happening in Europe and in the United States and even in South America, certainly most of those people are entering into the second wave. So it is kind of fearful, understanding that when you look at the 14-day period, the 14-day change, it is up by 26%, most of it coming from the European bloc. Talking about yesterday alone, 518,563 were the number of confirmed cases globally, and deaths stood at 7,312, up by 39%. So this is the news about the vaccine certainly will get people excited, regardless of maybe peer examinations and several other key things have not been looked into. Now, in the bid to try to dimension this, let's, if they can actually help us, what we know and what we don't know about this particular virus. We know the mRNA virus that is this particular the vaccine, mRNA vaccine, that is what everyone is celebrating right now. That is a joint partnership between BioNTech and Pfizer. Now, this must be noticed. I think, Rufai, you mentioned something about this. Now, the announcement was a press release and not a validated data. At the moment, we are expecting that the data will come up in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but for now, it's just a press release. Some are saying that usually farmers would always push this forward to actually help their stocks actually rise and maybe promise and under-deliver. But let's see how it actually goes. From the press release yesterday, Albert Bola spoke about this, and he said that this is the promise. He could not even, he said he has not even seen the data himself at the moment. Now, let's also actually put this into the mix here, that the number of driving these announcements are very minuscule. Understanding that, remember, over 43,000 people were part of this particular trial over the months, and as it stands right now, they found out that 94 people actually had COVID-19 from the pool of people there. And certainly, is that enough to go on with for now, based on the time frame, our Operation Warp Speed, certainly we might want to do with that. But looking at the large scale of things, that might not just be it. And this particular vaccine is a new technology all by itself. The mRNA is a new technology all by itself. No vaccine has actually come out till date that actually uses this technology. So if it actually works, it will be groundbreaking and it will be ceiling shattering, literally. And it will be very tricky to actually distribute because this particular vaccine, it needs to be super cold at every given point in time. Of course, it comes in 2 doses. So certainly for people that have even ordered, that's another talk entirely, because if you're ordering 10 million, that means your 10 million will be diluted to 5 million because it actually comes in the first dose and in the second dose. But they found out that after the second dose has been given, after 7 days, certainly people have shown great immunity, which is very, very good news for what we have actually looked at. Now, looking at this, quickly, let's remind people of all the races to a vaccine. One that I'm actually very particularly excited about, aside the Chinese we've also spoken about, that they have major entries into this vaccine race, over 15 of them, but leading them are Sinovac, Sinopharm, and Sinopharm even has 2, as a matter of fact, and not forgetting CanSinoBio. But Novavax, sometime in the coming weeks, in the coming days, would also be announcing their own result of phase 3 trial. We are hoping it will be this positive, and let's see how it actually goes. We are also expecting, before the end of the year, Oxford and AstraZeneca, they were initially leading, but at some point, due to scientific issues, they actually were pulled back. So let's see what actually becomes of that as we actually move on. In a bit, we're still talking about COVID-19 and how things are actually playing out. We know that the US has been the hardest hit in the world in terms of COVID-19 infections and deaths. And President-elect Joe Biden has actually put up an advisory committee made of our seasoned scientists and also experts. There, of course, we see the co-chairs, Dr. Vivek Murthy, who has been a Surgeon General, Dr. David Kessler, who has actually been with the FDA. These are people that have advised Joe Biden before he became president-elect, and he has actually just brought some of those people in and just said, let's push it along and see how we can do this. And we are hoping that their sense of direction be given to this team, and not just, a sense of direction be given to the fight against COVID-19. And Joe Biden has made a very, very emphatic statement, and I think we should resonate through. Even though we're speaking about vaccines, one thing is certain. Wearing of a face mask should never be underplayed, no matter what. It is still better, if you'd ask me, than getting a vaccine, because we're not sure when that would actually come up. But at the moment, getting a face mask is cheaper, and it will save a lot if we can do that and imbibe that particular culture. We have seen that wane at the moment, and we are hoping that at some point that people will begin to see this as a necessity once again.
I hope so, Aaron. Thanks for that report. But I'm actually quite excited about the vaccine, even though, as you've said, there are all kinds of logistical challenges. It needs to be kept at temperatures way below zero. I think it's minus 70 or 80 Celsius.
Super cold.
Yes, that's really quite worrying. And you need 2 doses within 3 weeks. Yeah. And potentially you then might need to take the vaccine and booster every year. So I'm trying to calculate how that's going to come. And Boris Johnson actually scared me when he said, he announced that Britain is at the top of the line for this vaccine. That suggests that there's some countries at the back. And I was thinking COVAX should please step in there and make sure those of us in Africa do not get left behind.
They've paid for it. That's the point. Remember, Pfizer did not take any money from the government. This is purely funded in-house. So the US has actually bought quite a chunk of it, and the UK also
said he's a front. But that's really quite worrying. So I'm now hoping that other vaccines can, be confirmed and found to be effective, at least as effective or more effective. But the other issue with this is that everybody, you're right, Rufai, in trying to be a little bit reluctant. People are getting carried away and excited. I'm sure you've read about the love story of the 2 doctors, the bio and tech doctors, how they even went to the lab on their wedding day and what have you. But everybody's getting carried away. We need to just stick with what we know works: wearing a mask and social distancing.
Well, what is clear is that any indication that a vaccine is possible within any period, will give hope, and that has, generated a lot of excitement. Even if the Germans say they are cautiously optimistic, some people are skeptical, and some people are very optimistic, resulting in what we've seen in the stock market and also with the jump in the price of crude oil. But I would have loved you to talk about Nigeria, where in Lagos we're told that a school on the mainland has reported cases of COVID-19 spreading in the school. And you know, this is the second time another school in Lekki was said to have had issues with COVID-19. And we've seen the numbers either going up or coming down. But maybe you have the opportunity to look at the Nigerian situation tomorrow, whether indeed we're having a surge or we are not testing enough, and what exactly can be done.
Right, thank you so much, Aaron.